no, we know all the terminology, and we just want to catch you with this bait. And then when you're in, then Jesus can come back and we can all go to heaven, or better yet, we'll get zapped out of here where you guys all suffer like it's like this 144,000. So you're going to suffer here while we're up in heaven, but we need you to get our end time scheme together. And the interesting thing is that in Israel, if there's any people that's not going to have the wool pulled over their eyes, it's Israelis. They are increasingly recognizing that Christian love for Israel is Christian love for Israel. In other words, whether you believe or not, we love you. Whether you accept our message or not, we love you. Whether you change in your opinion of Yeshua, we love you. Why? Because that's what we do. Because it's in our heart. Because we have a debt to you. I've actually had to tell Christians, don't overdo it. You don't have to apologize to every Jew you met for church history, because a lot of Jews don't even know it. Are you a Jew? I'm so sorry. So wait, hang on. Just build a relationship first before you apologize. But that's just the sincerity of hearts. So look at this news item. This is just a few days ago, July 27th, 2006. Washington, D.C. Representatives David Weldon and Elliot Engel and Trent Franks will announce the formation of the Congressional Israel Allies Caucus at a press conference tomorrow. The announcement comes as Israel continues to face international pressure to agree to a premature ceasefire as it confronts terrorist threats from Hezbollah and Hamas. Now look at this. Below is a brief description of the caucus's purpose. Israel receives tremendous support from numerous Christian groups and denominations in the United States and around the world. Acknowledging this, on January 5th, 2004, a Christian Allies Caucus was formed in the Israeli Knesset. The Israeli parliament formed this. Its mission is to develop lines of communication between Knesset members and many of these Christian groups that support Israel's right to exist and prosper within safe and secure borders. The Congressional Israel Allies Caucus is America's response to that initiative. So this is on the American Congress side, a deep joining with this group in Israel to say, as Christians, and to the extent that America has Christian sentiments, we stand with Israel. We support you. Israel has increasingly recognized that, quote, Christianity is not just good for tourism, but that there is a genuine, heartfelt, sacrificial love for the Jewish people in the hearts of many Christians. And who are these Christians? Generally those who take the Bible literally and seriously. The ones that really believe what's written are the ones that love the Jewish people. And that's all that I've seen through the years. And if you'll go back through history, you'll often see when there was a movement back to Scripture and a spiritual revival movement, it issued out in love for the Jews. You may not know much about the Puritans, for example, or just hear them negatively caricatured as these legalists. Many of them were deeply spiritual men. You read their writings about Israel, they were, many of them, passionate lovers of Israel, recognizing God's eternal purposes for the Jews. They even sought to see if England could be made into a New Jerusalem for Jews to come there and have refuge. What I would say is very simply, to the extent followers of Jesus have separated themselves from their Jewish roots, have separated themselves from the Scriptures, they have given place to anti-Semitism and ugly theology and Jew hatred. But that's because they've detached themselves from the faith and detached themselves from the roots. If you want to search out the remnant, you're always going to find the remnant that believes, just like in the Jewish population today, it's only the remnant that's Orthodox. So often, through much of church history, it's only been the remnant that's been true to the Scriptures. This much is certain. If we will simply live out our faith in a genuine, caring way, if we will simply let the life of God that's within us touch others, we don't need any secret method, we don't need some secret technique, we don't need some master plan. It's not going to happen like that. The great majority of Jewish people who come to Jesus come because a Gentile friend, neighbor, co-worker that had something real in God talked to them about the Lord. Thankfully, more and more Israelis, Sabras, native-born Israelis, are coming to the Lord in the land. Thankfully, there's an increase in lots of different fronts of Jewish people coming to faith in many different ways. And there's a viable Messianic Jewish witness, Jewish followers of Yeshua, recovering some of their lost roots in Scripture. Not to be deceptive, but it's because it's who they are, because they also love Torah. That is also bringing a witness and a challenge back to the Jewish people. And I'm personally convinced that as we get closer and closer to the Lord's return, be it 10 years away or 50 years away, that we'll continue to see God's Spirit working in the nations, and more Gentiles having their eyes open, coming to faith in Messiah, and more of our Jewish people. This is just a completely general introduction, and I want to orient you as to where we're going to be going. In the next session, I'm going to give you an overview from the Scriptures why we believe Yeshua is the Messiah. I'm going to give you an overview. And then after that, I'm going to give you principles of interpreting Messianic prophecy. We'll be getting into that in the afternoon. Looking more at depth in some of the specific prophecies in the book of Isaiah. And then asking the question, is Jesus being painted into the Tanakh, the Hebrew Scriptures? Is there just painting a picture that's false? We're going to look at that, look at some disputed texts. Then we're going to get into qualifications of the Messiah. What's the traditional Jewish view? What's the biblical view? Then I'm giving you an overview for the week. We're then going to deal with issues of sin and atonement. And do we need blood? Do we need the blood of a man? Are there alternative forms of atonement? Then we're going to get into the question of the nature of God. Is God triune? Is it blasphemous to speak in any way of Yeshua being divine, etc.? What's the testimony of Scripture? We're going to look at that. Then after that, we're going to look at the question of the Torah, the law of Moses. Is this binding in perpetuity? What role should it have in lives of believers today? Where does that leave Jewish followers of Jesus? After that, we're going to look at specific challenges to the New Testament, reliability of the New Testament, historical background, alleged misquotation of verses, etc. Then after that, we're going to look at the question of the oral law. Did God give an oral law to Moses on Mount Sinai that's been passed on through the generations, and only through that oral law can we rightly understand Scripture? Is that true or is that a myth? And then look at some contrast between, quote, Judaism and, quote, Christianity. I put them in quotes because there's almost a false dichotomy in even saying it. And then close with examining God's purposes for Israel. Obviously, we've got about 30 hours together, but we've got a lot of material to cover, and I could just as well teach a 300-hour seminar as a 30-hour seminar. So we want to be as focused as we can. We'll have some time for Q&A at the end of each day, and then time for personal interaction. So we're going to close here. So I want to talk to you in this section about why we believe, based on Scripture, that Jesus, Yeshua, is the Messiah. I have never been particularly impressed with the method of finding how many prophecies there are that Jesus fulfilled. He fulfilled 300 specific prophecies, and if you calculate it mathematically, the possibility of anyone fulfilling all of those, it would be as if you put stacked up quarters in the entire state of Texas 100 feet high, and you had to find the one quarter, and it would be that impossible. Well, that means that all the prophecies are accurately interpreted, and that also